Well, I think the submarine is not just about war fighting and changing the cross-strait military balance. The indigenous submarine itself has really changed Taiwan. As you point out, President Tsai Ing-wen has effectively doubled the defense budget from 10 billion to over 19 billion during her tenure. And what she's really done is built up a domestic defense industrial base and really championed major indigenous defense programs like the submarine. And that's really demonstrated Taiwan's commitment to its own defense and its self-sufficiency. And that strategy has really created a key domestic constituency that supports Taiwan's defense and the increased spending that can address the growing military threat from China. So the Haikun submarine that they just launched is really the culmination of President Tsai's effort. Yep. You really have to appreciate how tremendously complex a submarine is, and it requires really advanced project management and systems integration capabilities, as well as the ability to coordinate a host of both international and domestic partners. So the launch of this submarine really demonstrates an advancement in the capability of some of Taiwan's key players, particularly CSBC, the integrator of the program. So it's also worth noting how quickly this came together. The hull went from design to launch in about 7 years or so. And I think that's quite impressive considering where they started. So the submarine, I think, really represents a big morale boost for Taiwan's military and the people of Taiwan. They should be proud of it. Yeah. It really demonstrates commitment and ability to defend themselves.
Yeah, and that possible speed is impressive because Australia's been working on submarines which have yet to be delivered, and of course we've now signed up for this AUKUS pact, AUKUS deal. So, how can it be guaranteed that it'll be delivered by 2025, and how big is the fleet going to be at the end?
So Taiwan's plans are to build up to 8 of these new submarines. They have an existing 2 high-functioning submarines that they acquired in the late 1980s. But I think it's important to recognize that there really isn't a single silver bullet for Taiwan's defense. The submarine itself really isn't going to change the balance of power across the strait, but it will play a really important deterrence role during peacetime, and it will counter gray zone military coercion from China, which, as you point out, has really increased. So it may complicate PLA's Navy's operations, and it'll force them to increase their own investments in anti-submarine warfare and the protection of PLA Navy capital ships. So this submarine is going to impose a cost on Beijing and the PLA, and that's, of course, in Taiwan's interest. And should China decide to use force against Taiwan, then I think the submarine will play a number of roles, either countering the invasion or conducting other missions closer to China's shores or in deeper waters harassing Chinese shipping or opening up channels to open a blockade. So I think it's a really important morale booster, and it's going to be a key factor, but it's not a decisive one because there is none. It's going to be down to a lot of other systems like anti-ship cruise missiles and sea mines, I think, that will be particularly important in defending Taiwan.
Yeah,
as well.
It's always, it's been an interesting discussion, Drew, about how difficult it is potentially to invade, say, Taiwan. If China was planning an offensive against Taiwan where they wanted to take the country forcibly, how do you think they would go about it?
Well, it would take a long time for China to prepare. And some people argue that China is preparing now by building their own resiliency, by diversifying their own supply chains and stockpiling critical materials. So I think we'll have advance warning and we'll know it when we see it. But it's probably going to be a phased effort, and it's going to include a step-by-step continuum of coercion, starting with the type of coercion we're seeing now, regular operations around Taiwan, and then potentially move into a blockade phase. Again, the submarine would play a role in a blockade, countering that. And then, of course, China has a very large inventory of ballistic missiles, strike aircraft. It could impose direct military costs on Taiwan should it choose to escalate. And then I think the final phase would be an invasion itself.
Yeah. Given the pressure China puts countries under not to recognize Taiwan, are you surprised at just how much support they are getting for the program itself, the submarine program?
That's a really great question. I think Lockheed Martin and Raytheon are two very high-profile foreign participants in Taiwan's indigenous submarine program. But there were a number of other international participants who kept a lower profile. And I think this has a couple of implications. I mean, certainly the willingness of countries from North America, Europe, and elsewhere in Asia to participate in a major defense program in Taiwan indicates that there are limits to Beijing's ability to coerce other countries, and that's very positive. I think as Australia embarks on its own ambitious submarine program, which is going to be much more complex than the version that Taiwan has just built, obviously it has tremendous support from the US and the UK, but the potential of finding other industry partners from around the world probably contributes to Australia's own resilience and could help it build its own defense industrial base. So there might be opportunities for Australian companies and the Australian government to learn from Taiwan's experience in systems integration, complex program management, and managing a large number of multinational and domestic suppliers and supply chains. So I think Australia could benefit from engaging with Taiwan to learn more about their experiences and potentially also participate either on the receiving end or providing technology that's beneficial to both countries.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point you make. Well, a very interesting phase for Taiwan. Great to get your expertise on this. Thanks, Drew.
My pleasure.